are back for another video about GAC 101, Grand Arena Theory. This week, we're going to be changing gears a little bit with Grand Arena. Last week, we looked a lot at what your roster needs to be before you even hit the join button. Now, what we're going to work into is after you hit the join button. So you hit the join button, you're locked into the GAC, you've been matched up with your opponent, and what do you do now? One of the most important parts of GAC strategy is scouting. And today we're going to look at what I call the 2-minute method, and it's exactly that. It is a strategy you can use to scout that should only take you 2 minutes. And this I think is pretty cool because sometimes you just don't have the time to sit down and go through spreadsheets and look at bots to look at your opponent. And also sometimes your opponent just doesn't even have those materials, like he's not registered on those sites, or maybe he just doesn't look that threatening, so you want to be able to get this process done quickly. And everything we're going to look at today is all in game. We're not going to use any spreadsheets. We're not going to use any bots. It is a 2-minute method all inside the game. So that being said, there are three things. There are three specific things we need to look at when scouting an opponent with the 2-minute method. The first one is really important, and that is lifetime banners. A little disclaimer here too, this will work about 9 times out of 10. Every once in a while you'll get a player whose GAC strategy has changed radically in the recent history, or maybe this account, the person who's using it now, it's not even his account. So this isn't 100% reliable. But in my experience over the last couple weeks, it's been really, really helpful, and for one crucial reason, and that is knowing if your opponent is even going to set a defense. This is something that's really crucial because if your opponent doesn't set a defense, then they're going to auto-deploy, and you're going to need all your strongest teams to be able to maintain a good banner count and also full clear. So that being said, what is a really, really low score to the point where you can know someone is going to auto-deploy? In the current game, in Division 1, this number is 300,000 or below for me. This number is going to change throughout time as lifetime banners become larger over time, and this is also going to be different in lower divisions. But this is something that you can start paying attention to now, because over time you'll start to get a knack for it. You'll start to pay attention more, even if your division is significantly lower, or even if you're in Division 1 from a year from now, you will be able to pick up on when a player is just not going to set a defense purely from this number. The other thing that you can learn from this is that the opponent has a really, really, really high banner count, which today is probably 650,000. This player probably goes really, really heavy offense, or they're just a really, really fantastic player and they can set a good defense and also beat their opponent on offense. But with that being said, we're going to look at that one first, or we have looked at that one first, simply because if you know your opponent is going to auto-deploy, there's not really a reason to continue with the rest of this. So that's the first thing you need to look at, is lifetime banners. The second thing, and this will help you determine how good the player is or if they just go heavy offense, is the win-loss ratio. And this is actually something End-All Be-All taught me quite a while ago. And what you do is you go into the player card, you see how many win battles they have in GAC, and you see how many loss battles they have in GAC. And you can use this ratio to make a percentage that can show you what type of player they are. This obviously won't show you what exact teams they put on defense or what exact comps, but you can learn a lot from a player just by looking at this. And then when you go to look at the roster, you'll know which teams are probably getting holds by what they're setting. So what you're going to do is you are going to make the ratio, and if their defense is about 30 to 40% of their defensive wins, or about 30 to 40% of their offensive wins, this is a normal, balanced player. Probably doesn't set too much on defense, but also doesn't set too little. They're going for the full clear, but they also want to stop you. Below 30% is when you start to work into players that are really, really offensively heavy and probably just leave a few trap teams on defense. And if the player is over 40%, this is a player that has a tendency to leave a really hard defense. So again, these numbers are not absolutes, but over time, now that GAC has been in game mode for long enough, these numbers have become super reliable. So if you're in between the 30 and 40%, or your opponent is rather, they're a normal player. Above 40, heavy defense. Below 30, you're going to find a lighter defense. And the last thing that we can look at that can help us to scout in the very beginning is go into the character panel and sort by speed. This is really, really important because after looking at the other two pieces of information, we can compare with this one to see if the counters you have and even the counters they have are going to work. A really clear example of this, I think, would just be Imperial Troopers. Imperial Troopers, they are all built about going first. If your Piet or your Stark can go before, let's say, their really fast Bosk and they have the Django lead Zeta, then you know that that counter is going to work, or vice versa. There are lots of teams that are based around speed, almost all of them are. So going in by sorting by speed, that can already let you know, if this person sets this team on defense, I can take this on offense. If not, you can start to develop your strategy around that. And we'll get to a little bit more of what we need to do with strategy in the next week videos. But this week, we're going to focus on scouting. So collecting all this information is really helpful. Also, one thing you can learn by sorting by speed is just to see this player's priorities with modding. This is something that I found really helpful last season. When doing this, if I saw my opponent's fastest character in their entire roster was something kind of random, like, I don't know, an Ahsoka, you can get a real feel for what type of player they are. And that, combined with the other two things that we're looking at, can really show what you need to do to maximize your potential against this opponent. So that is the 2-minute method, lifetime banners, win-to-loss ratio, and sort by speed. And that's going to be it for today. Until the next time, guys, stay awesome.